Thank you, Michelle. Hi, thanks for coming out tonight. This is Matthias. You can guess who I am. And together with Friedrich from Borries, who's not here tonight, who has an architectural firm practice together with Matthias by the name of Raumtaktik, Spatial Tactics. We have co-edited the book. Michelle just mentioned it. It's called Space Time Play. That's the name of this event tonight too. And yes, the idea was to bring together architects and game design researchers, to involve them in a dialogue. And we are really happy that we had the honor to work with a lot of people. So one of the ideas of the book was to somewhat bring together like a collage, a set of people, do also a little bit different of a format that in comparison to the formats, the scientific book formats that you normally find, like some 10 people write 20 pages of essays. We didn't want that. We wanted very brief contributions, reviews of games, little essays, and also little descriptions, short descriptions of more experimental games. And the result is here, and so that's a good thing, I guess.
Well, yeah, and we start with the explaining how the book works. This title, Space Time Play, and we're quite happy that the whole evening now here is also under this title. In a way, it's a bit a programmatic title because it refers to a book by Siegfried Gideon called Space-Time Architecture that was written at the beginning of the architectural, like the modernity, the modern movement in architecture, and it was sort of a whole change in culture and many things. And maybe that's sort of like at least the idea now. We have to move on to game and play, and that's what the book is about. Here is the whole list of authors who contributed to the book. So we mainly collected all this stuff and had to read it and edit it and so on. Two of the authors are actually also here tonight, so
yep.
I'm very happy about that.
Mary Flanagan, raise your arm, please, thank you. And Matt Adams, who's of Blast Theory, who've been doing great games, experimental stuff, work. Thanks for joining us.
When you maybe later have a chance to actually flicker through the book, it's important to know that we collected three, I think Steffen also already mentioned it, 3 different kind of texts. So one, there are little essays, they have a certain typo and layout style. There are game descriptions, that is kind of commercial games described by critical authors, and project descriptions or game reviews and project descriptions is like university stuff, art stuff, so like games that were not developed commercially, not for the commercial market. And here you see, well, you can't actually read it here on the screen, but that is sort of like all the essays, and here you see the game reviews and the project descriptions. So there are many of them. They're only 2 to 6 pages long, and we give you now a short introduction into either game reviews or project descriptions, because the essays are pure text, or mainly text, and here we want to show some images.
So the game...
It's sort of the whole book is separated into 5 levels, and we also introduce to you the 5 levels. The first level is called Short Space-Time History of Interactive Entertainment, and it's about the architecture of computer and video games, and that goes in both ways, as you will see from the examples now. Level 1.
So here as an example of one of the reviews that we have, where we're tried to collect an overview of, say, the spatial or the evolution of space in computer and video games, is quite an untypical game in a way, because it's almost, again, stepping away from the desktop. Those of you who've played the Wii know that you can use gestural interaction these days. So Dance Dance Revolution is basically a special type of input device that you can attach to either your personal computer or your console, and you dance along to rhythms that or songs that the computer plays for you, and you have to match certain symbols and then, hit the symbols on a little rock that you have here. We don't have them here, but I can mimic it to you like this. And so we kind of start off this chapter with this type of game which has the player really perform in physicality already and start to embrace physical space, and which is kind of interesting, and which is a sort of a movement that we see and that a lot of game designers and also architects see, and it's sort of the matching point between physical space and the space that is the virtual space in the computer game, where they both meet. So probably a nice example.
Now we're coming back to real games, or like not real games, but what you imagined as computer games, and it's the early beginnings. It's not yet a game, really. It's sort of the 2D movement for tennis for two or Pong. So that's the first graphic game in a way, and it's very simple because the only thing that moves, you can move, is the two bats on both sides, and there's a tennis ball, supposed to be a tennis ball, going back and forth. And the fantastic thing is that it's very early and it's already a two-player game. And then there were many sort of, in the beginning it was mainly played on mainframe computers, so you had this sort of network computer environment and two people could play this game.
And it's also sort of an historical trajectory, and trajectory is quite the right word for this, because of course in Pong and in Tennis for Two you play a trajectory, a ball that is pretending to move, and it's quite interesting because if you know a little bit about the history of both games, and you see that there's sort of an overlap. Tennis for Two was developed by a man called William Higginbotham in Brookhaven Laboratories, who was also an inventor of the time mechanism on the atomic bomb that was blown up over Japan. So, there's co-evolutions everywhere, right?
Yeah, but for us it is important that it's about how space can be sort of put forward or represented, and the other forms, either it's very simple graphics, it's almost one-dimensional graphics, and the other way is text, so that's more about the information. And Zork, or even before Zork, the Colossal Cave Adventure, were very early games how to describe a complex space by text only, and you can move through the text by commands like going upward, downward, and then there would be a description. There is a hole on the left side, and then you could go to the left into the hole, and so on. And the funny thing is that the earliest of these examples was actually a description of a real cave, the Mammoth Cave, and the reproduction or the retelling of the real space in this text adventure was so precise that divers or climbers who actually knew the original cave could navigate through the game very fast because it represented the original very much. And we actually say, we can't really prove it, but if you play hard, you could probably also move around in the real cave.
It's an excellent article, but I'm not going to get into anecdotes where this guy really looked up the code of the original adventure, and then he's a cave climber himself, and then he was exploring the cave just by having looked at the code, right? And so I can't remember. Do you know his name? It was in Digital Humanities Quarterly, I think. Anyways, look it up. It's an excellent, it's one of the best actually essays that I've read in a long time. Excellent. Katamari Damacy is a game where you roll up the world. You're a little ball, you're a prince who has to prove to his godlike father that you are capable of and worthwhile to rule the universe. And you have to roll up the world with little Katamari that grows bigger and bigger and bigger. In the end, you get to like roll up skyscrapers and whole islands. And it's a game that belongs in the section of the history of spatial evolution in games, in computer games, because it's almost ironic that you roll up the game world itself, you know?
So that was the first chapter, so that was the description of either space in games or actually changing the real space by playing games. We are not only architects, we also talk about urbanism, so the urban situation is about people and interaction of people, and this also happens in computer games now. So the level 2 make-believe urbanism is about the ludic construction of the digital metropolis. And here we start with something different, because that is not a game, it's a book in the beginning, Neuromancer by William Gibson, which for us was important because it's a starting point of many terms actually and ideas. And in this book, the term metaverse, no, not metaverse, that's the other one, sorry. But this one is the sort of the grid where you sort of dive into, and it's like it's already like a world where you find information and you connect information, you can talk to other people. Starts as an idea, and that is now developed further and further, and now the matrix is something that is actually there. Very nice example. Then, well, what you know now is all these games like Second Life and so on, games where people buy places and live together, interact with each other. Most of them are now designed by commercial companies. In the very beginning, there was a concept called active worlds, an open source concept where you could also buy little plots of land, and then you would develop your house and you could meet your neighbors and so on. And the funny thing was, I think you can see it here quite well, that in the beginning they had like a grid, and in the middle, and you could your address was only by numbers. So in the middle there was 0.0 or no, 0.0, so that was sort of like the central point, and then you could go in all directions to I think 255 or whatever, like 8-byte code, and you could go in all directions, so also minus, plus, and so on. And because it was easy to, and then the people who founded it, they started in the middle. They made like the mayor, whatever, the whole administration, like
the
meeting
overseers.
Points. They were all in the middle, and then people could sort of take plots to build up their private addresses. And in the beginning, they started, and you see on the from your on the left side, you see the started with taking like it along the lines of either having an address like 80 or 080 or minus 80 because that was easy to remember, or the other nice one is 80. So that means you develop like horizontal, vertical, and in the diagonals, and you can see from the first image, and then later the whole sort of space became more and more packed, and people had to also inhabitate the space in between. And that remembers like the development of real cities so much that is quite interesting. And then in the later step, it happened that the center kept on living, because that was the people who started the whole thing. They were doing it on and on. But along the main roads, like the main diagonal and the horizontal lines, there were many people who didn't care in the end anymore, because they left the game. They were not there anymore. So you had that what is like a shrinking city thing, that then the new ones had to live in the areas in between, and these areas were sort of deserted because it was a democratic process, so nobody dared to take away a plot of land from somebody, and you could see the whole sort of change of urban situation that you can see in a real city in this game.
Who was in Active Worlds? Active Worlds? Anyone? We're old-time citizens. And maybe this is also interesting if we just remember the two questions that we posed in the beginning, that we kept asking ourselves. You know, Michel said Friedrich and Matthias are both architects. I'm a game person, not even that, sort of researching person who stumbled across architects, which is different. And so here, World of Warcraft, of course, architects look at that, and maybe that's an interesting way to explain what we think is interesting about the book. Architects look at World of Warcraft in terms of, and I understood this because of the process, as a social space that is being set up by people being in a virtual environment, which is, of course, per se and in itself a space, right? And so I'm looking at it in terms of how to organize people's according to certain rules that you give out, so they have fun, which is a special type of architectural genre, if you really think about it, right? It's how do you please by the way of spaces. But it's not only about space, it's about interaction. And this is something that we came across often, having an argument almost over, well, we think that the space is really important, and I was like, no, well, it's the interaction. So these are the two poles almost, you could say. Yes?
Yeah, Grand Theft Auto is also very interesting because it takes it takes parts of real places and puts them together into a new map of a virtual world that doesn't exist like this, but every piece is sort of real, or it can be found almost.
It's a mem in a way.
Yeah, but it's like put.
No, you go ahead.
So it's a mix, it's a remix of real places in a way, and it was a very interesting experience to sort of see these maps of different real places
that are brought together in this virtual place, and you don't quite know where that's from, but it's a place in itself, right? So you go there and there's something that reminds you of San Francisco, but it's not really actually San Francisco.
And so that was sort of the starting point, that we sort of analyze either architecture and also the urban situation. And now the third chapter is called Ubiquitous Games, Enchanting Places, Buildings, Cities and Landscapes. And it's about level 3 is about how now games are everywhere, and the whole city and all places can be informed. There's information on it, and you could actually play either with your handheld device or with other medias in the real space, and we have some examples for that.
The Walz Society, for example, here, I think in Amsterdam, has done games, Frequency, what is it called? Frequency 1550, I think, if anyone knows that. So the first example on this level is a quite popular leisurely activity by the name of geocaching. Who knows geocaching? We all know geocaching, right? So, well, in a way, it's a precursor to what we call ubiquitous or pervasive games. We're not really aware of it because it's so leisurely and done by a lot of people, just more like, take your kids and go out to the great outdoors and stuff. So we found that kind of interesting to put it in there. You hide a geocache somewhere, and there's geo-coordinates, GPS coordinates that you find on a website, and then you go try to find the place, right? So that's how geocaching works. Another example is the game of Bot Fighters. It's one of the first commercial examples that's frequently cited as, wow, this is the thing, but it's already quite a little bit of time. I think it came out in 2001 in Sweden. The game basically works with proximity, so if another player is in my proximity, I will see it on my cell phone, and I am capable of shooting that other player by sending an SMS. So the pretty frequent activity of sending SMSs is turned into a game mechanic.
PacMan,
yeah.
I think we didn't mention now, but it's a very interesting game because here now that happens what we were talking about, that the city is actually engaged and the computer is not so much used anymore. It's more the remembering of a computer game. Everybody knows PacMan, and in this case, the game PacMan style was played in the Manhattan grid, so people were wearing masks or costumes, looking like the figures of the game, and were running around in Manhattan grid, and other people were looking at them and wondering what's going on, and they were all controlled by telephone, so they would send SMS where they are, and they were running around in the grid and playing the game. And that's by Frank Lantz, and he's sort of running a game institute, a game school in NYU in New York, and they're developing many of these kind of games. That's also a very funny example. It's by a Belgian guy, and he develops this sort of programming. Is a psychogeographic computer, and what you see on the right side you can't really read, but it looks like a computer program, and everybody is like a group here, they play it, and you have to solve a puzzle without thinking, and there is like rules, you have to meet somebody, exchange a puzzle piece and so on, and if you completely strictly follow the rules, you don't have to think, you just have to do what's there programmed, and after a while you walked around the city, you met some people, and you maybe had new looks, you had new views of the city, and you solved the puzzle. And it's sort of a method of starting a derive, and people don't even know that they will do it, and then they will find completely new places. I did this now 3 times in a year with my students at ETH, and they were always thinking like, he's crazy doing this game with us. But then later they told me stories about what they were finding out about their city they never thought about before.
So this is a fun project. Aram Bartol does a lot of low technology, well, artistic things, pieces. So this is his first-person shooter or ego shooter glasses. So it's a cutout thing that you're supposed to wear. And as you can see here on the right-hand side, there's a weapon, a machine gun that points inwards, right? So you wear them, and you always, of course, constantly see the weapon here. Supposedly, upon wearing the glasses out, and
it's a bit blurry, though.
It's it's blurring your sight, of course. It's augmenting your sight. So we
but in a way, this is also taking like the computer game environment back into real space. He also does like boxes of games and
he produces out of cardboard. He cuts out weapons from World of Warcraft that he carries around, or the little chat windows that you have above the avatars. So he walks around with the little chat windows. I just engaged him, by the way, for a show in Beijing. So we're doing this with kanjis now.
So level 4, serious fun. Utilizing game elements for architectural design and urban planning. This is again an example from this now infamous game Second Life. In Sweden there is a whole architectural school that now develops designs in this game where they can actually they don't have to think about gravity, rain, insulation, whatever anymore, because normally if you go to these kind of worlds it looks like a mix of suburbia and Walt Disney World or landscape. It's quite funny. It looks like little castles put next to each other, but they start to think about what does it mean to be an architect in this kind of space where you have completely different restrictions, and they have funny examples, as you can see here on the image, of how this space might be developed. So in this chapter we talk about how it can be made architecture in this kind of world, and that maybe has also a drawback onto real architecture. Other examples from this school in Stockholm.
So the purpose, maybe we should say this, of this level is to demonstrate how not only game technologies but also mechanics found in games can be used for the planning process in architecture and the urban planning process, but also as a result, probably. So what are games good for in the practice of people like Matthias and Friedrich? Well, I don't have a lot to say about this project, because I don't understand it, man.
Me neither, but it's very nice images.
But we love the graphics. We love the graphics. We do. They're beautiful. So this is a group from Delft, from the TU, and they try to use parametric models to create worlds and urban spaces, landscapes, what they call Evolutionary City. So it's game-like. They, of course, use game engines to also produce the graphics, so that's kind of interesting. Of course, that's a frequently done thing in architectural practices because 3D engines are very powerful, right?
This is also parametric design, but it's in a much more serious way. It's started to be developed in Kaiserslautern by Ludger Hovestad together with Kees Christianse from Rotterdam. That's why it's called Kaisersrott. And now they're both at ETH Zürich and they keep on developing it. And it's about how to make urban plans where many people have different wishes. So everybody, that was sort of like a participatory process. So all the people who would live there could be asked, so do you want to live close to the sea, to the forest, to which neighbor, to the church, and how big is your space, like the patch of land you want, and how big is your house. And then they could all this input is put into like a mask, and the computer knows all this information now, and then you have certain rules, how the path should be either straight or curved, and how the junctions are, and then the computer starts to generate a pattern where all these wishes are somehow optimized, or the options for people are almost, or they come very close to what they wanted. And this is like, they call it feeder, it's like a feeder system, it's like a
feather system.
Yeah, but it's about, so there is no algorithm that sort of completely calculates it, but it's an ongoing process where always there's a generation of new mutations developed, and it's checked is better or worse, and if it's a better one, it's continued with this one, and so it's going on, and there will never be one solution, because when you start it slightly different, it will be completely go other ways, or might go other ways, but it will come very close to an optimized solution, and you couldn't normally do that with normal planning. And I mean, you can now discuss if that's aesthetically okay, and also there's other urban planning rules that might not be really taken seriously, but it's also funny that now the images that are there look like concrete art, and so they now have big paintings in the office of this looking like this, of the patches of land, and they can also be sold at Art Basel maybe.
So this is a game that I co-designed. It's a, pervasive game for tourists. It's a service that launched last summer in the city of...
You have 1 minute.
Oh.
No, 1 minute for the whole show. So I think
1 minute for the whole show. So this is a tourist game in the city of, historical city of Regensburg. You get to rent a game controller. You have to solve quests. And by solving the quests and walking around in the city, you learn about the history of the city. It's a gesture recognizing device. And in the end, you get a website that shows you your path through the city and your pictures that you've taken. It's a real service, period.
No, because we want to show you the last chapter.
Yes.
Games between utopia and dystopia. And here it's about what is sort of the future of it, what might be the developments, good and bad. And there are many... Well, there's many
there
bad.
are many bad things.
As well, we talk about films, war games. Some of you might know it. It's about a little boy hacking into a computer and actually starting a nuclear war. So that is what might happen, that you can't really distinguish reality from game anymore. And that's not only, like here, it's like a vision, but we have examples of either humor war, that is a game engine where people reenact real military operations, and like 10 days after something happened, you can go through a simulation and capture Saddam Hussein yourself or something like this. And you can also go to places where you couldn't go anymore because it's too risky. Now you can simulate it, and you can see the architecture, and you can train how to behave in a situation like this. And the same thing happens in this game called America's Army. Some people of you maybe heard of, but that's less bloody in a way, and it's nicer because that's a recruiting tool for the American army. And rumors are that if you're very good in it, you get a call from the special units that you might join some of them. And that is also maybe the future, that in the future, you don't know, you play some game and maybe it's a real mission because you control some unmanned vehicle or flight object somewhere, and then the mission is done and nobody knows who was it, and it's completely... Yeah, so don't play games anymore if you don't, whatever, yeah.
Of course, we were inspired by Ender's Game when we put together this last chapter, which is a novel about a kid, and I don't want to give away the plot to you because it's being shot and brought to the big screen, the silver screen, so a kid who believes that he's really good at playing computer games. The Scalable City is it's a fun project where Sheldon Brown from UC, no, where is he? I think he's at UC, is reshaping California according to rules that he sets. But he's also basically a land sculptor, like Slarty Bart Fast in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Basically creating weird and impossible worlds, really, which is also something that architects have been doing the past hundreds of years, right? All over again, creating possible worlds.
So I mean, we close with something that is not a computer game at all, but it's maybe also a sign that you can also use it for good things. That is about the book 1984, that can be put in, is normally a novel, in the novel section, but in this game you are sort of asked to go to your local bookstore and put it into either political science or
history section,
contemporary
politics,
that was sort of asked for through the internet, and you had to document where you would do it, and there were many thousands doing it, and so that is an active way of actually playing a game in real city with some political content, and I think we're now over time already. But I hope, as you realize, we only show like the game descriptions and project descriptions. There are also essays that sort of go much more deeper into detail of what this all might be. But so please have a look at the book and enjoy the evening.
Thank you.
Well, before you go, maybe we can squeeze in one question?
Yeah.
An audience question? Someone here? No? Okay. Well, I'm still confused about one
question.
thing that I'd like to see cleared up for myself, actually. Going through your book, I really liked how you divided it into levels, because it's really according to the game theme, of course. But then in the end, there's the next level, right? Although a lot of the work that you describe in the previous levels is already in this next level, where the virtual game space merges with the physical architectural space. So isn't the next level level 6?
Oh, definitely. In my opinion, it is. So, for example, with a friend, the next seminar that I'll be teaching will be to create an apartment that will be a game apartment. So we're assigning students the task of refurbishing and of rethinking the way that people are in a living room, in a sleeping room. We're thinking about a bed that rewards you for sleeping well and for sleeping according to certain rules that we set out. So that's the next project.
Yeah, I think if I understand your question right, that's sort of what you're saying is that what he's describing now can also be chapter 3, because it's also ubiquitous games in a way. So I think we don't talk about chapter level 6. It's more about thinking that all, like either architecture and urban planning or game design, has to step forward to the next level, because all what we're talking about in all levels is sort of coming together and
so basically the projects that that you describe in your book are predecessors to the next step, are like the fathers of the projects that you'll see in the next step then, or the next level.
Yeah, and also it's more like a collection of things that are happening right now, but now we're putting them together in a book, and if you put them all together for real, there will be a whole new world, and that might be the next level.
I mean, there's a concluding sentence. It's very short on the very last page of the book, and it's
Let's Play.
It's called Let's Play. So we'll give out this sort of call to arms, if you wish, to designers, and because, well, we found at least that architects and game designers have a lot in common. Of course, it always depends on what's your destination, what's the goal, what do you want to do? Is it fun? Is it create a certain type of space for a certain type of activity? So it was a good journey, I guess. Right?
Okay. Well, maybe that's also a nice closing sentence. So let's play. I think Anna Nixon will